like you're a reporter. Are you here at the High Court? What are you here at the High Court for today?
I'm here today regarding the case with Maria Gallastegui.
Okay, with
Gallastegui?
Yeah.
How do you pronounce her surname? To do with protest and the Prasra legislation, and the fact that it's now become increasingly difficult to protest, particularly in front of the Houses of Parliament in the area of Westminster, where tents and any kind of camping equipment has now been effectively criminalised, and any form of protest can effectively be removed without any given notice or any given warning, and any equipment which facilitates anybody to stay and continue to stay warm and under shelter can be seized and removed. Now, as it stands, as I understand it, Maria has a 3 metre by 1 metre by 3 metre height space to display placards and to have any equipment or to place any bodies, and there's allowed to be up to 20 individuals present as her authorisation currently stands. Now, the Prasra legislation seeks to challenge her SOCPA authorisation for protest. Now, if they manage to overturn the authorisations which Maria has succeeded in applying to and for, then it really has really significant potential impact on the future of protest, and the fact that Westminster can then decide what is legitimate protest and what's a legitimate cause. Now, one interesting point that the judge raised was that Westminster was had some kind of say regarding the efficacy of protest, and he actually did use those words, the efficacy of protest, and implied that only ineffective protests were being removed. However, I would beg to differ that they are only concerned with what is perceived as a more effective means of protest. Now, it would seem a real shame for protest to have its heart cut out and to not be allowed to be as effective as it could be. And why is it bothering Westminster? Why does it bother the House of Parliament? And why should they have to legitimise and validate whether or not something means something to the general public who they are supposed to support and represent? I don't feel that they do represent the public if they will not give air to public views.
And what implications do you think this might mean internationally? Because you've got countries like Russia right now where major protests may be taking place due to the results of the elections, situations even like Syria. Could this give license to other countries, because this involves the Convention of the Human Rights Act and issues surrounding it?
There is a serious breach and an ongoing breach of the Human Rights Act and the right of any kind of freedom of speech, and also just being able to have the right of shelter under Article 10 and 11 and in the Section 6 of the Human Rights Act. Well, all of those are under question.
Because they were talking about banning, even the Westminster raised the issue over having a chair at a protest. That could be possibly seen as a banned item, as well as things like blankets.
Well, this criminalises any kind of comfort, any kind of human comfort. Next, they're going to be saying to wear any kind of coat is unlawful outside the House of Parliament.
And also, in terms of, I believe the judge had mentioned also about winter, that they should take into consideration the fact that in winter you will need something to keep you warm. If you were even just having an all-night vigil, it wouldn't be possible to have a protest without having something to keep you warm.
Well, it's completely unreasonable to believe that anybody can safely brave the elements for any period of time without sufficient clothing and sufficient resources such as a blanket. And some people are actually disabled and require a wheelchair and a blanket just to retain their body heat during the day. Now, does that mean that the disabled would be criminalised for having to use a wheelchair? I believe these legislations are completely unjust and unlawful and completely disproportionate, totally dehumanising and essentially criminal in making people physically uncomfortable and endangering physical health.
And so the judgment wasn't given this afternoon. It could have been given this afternoon. Had it gone against her, what would have the result or outcome of that been if she had lost this afternoon?
As I understand it, the outcome today, had they made a decision that would have gone against Maria's occupation of that 3 metre by 1 metre space, then her current injunction would have been terminated and her permissions would have been revoked and the authorisation would have been declined. This would have meant, I would imagine, the immediate removal of the box and any placards.
And I'm not too sure whether it would make her homeless or whether she has another home, but they would most likely destroy it. Or would she be given the opportunity to move it herself? Or would it mean the Metropolitan Police coming in and dismantling it?
I wouldn't be aware of how they would execute the orders. However, I would imagine, given what has happened historically with the tents that were there previously, that very little notice was given. And in effect they were immediately removed.
Yeah, it was mentioned, because I believe the judge tried to point out that if maybe such laws were prohibited, were allowed, that people always had the right to come to court. But the other side pointed out that such opportunities were not given.
There's several points which are tricky with such a statement. Is that one, because the PRASRA legislation gives the police the powers to immediately remove any form of evidence of protest, and including the tents which may be used to support the protest, that it does not give time for any individual to be able to make it to any given court at any time of day, let alone night. Now in this case, people were demanded to remove their possessions at 7:30 p.m. If that had been, say,
when the court was closed.
Yeah, so when the court was closed. So it was not possible nor practicable for people to be able to get to the court. Now, even had that been during the day, then people must be able to afford to come to the court. So they must have access to the court. So there must be a court either within swift walking distance, and they must have time to reach the court and get back. The court must have time to accept and hear what they have to say, and most people need to access a lawyer as well to find out the law. You know, the court process is unbelievably complicated for the average layman. Most people do not have the legal knowledge and know-how and the knowledge of legalese to be able to negotiate the standard proceedings of your average court. So in this sense, it's just not possible for most people to seek an injunction on a normal day.
Or to have a fair trial. So technically that takes us back again to the Human Rights Act, that you would not get a fair trial at that time of the night, or if the police have these kind of arbitrary powers, it would be in conflict with that part of the law.
Not even during the day
access. You wouldn't even get access to a trial, let alone a fair trial.
Yeah. Now it was mentioned that what about if there was 48 hours notice? And the judge questioned, you know, is 48 hours notice enough? Now it was pointed out that many people do not get legal aid.
Yeah.
It's not possible to access legal aid for many, and that puts yet another barrier in the way of a fair trial. Now in this case, the damage has already been done. The possessions will have been seized, the placards will have been seized, and the person would have been removed with immediate effect, and perhaps even arrested for failure to respond to the direction. Now in this case, that would mean that there is no time to seek appropriate remedy through the courts. And in terms of seeking remedy, it means that there is none available through our current judicial system. Now, our judicial system is meant to be impartial, yet this seems very, very political to me.
Because technically the damage would be irreparable. People would have their tents done, they would have gone through a traumatic experience.
Their possessions may well be actually destroyed.
Yeah, and the protests will it destroyed as well.
Yeah.
And the right to protest robbed, when in fact it could still go through final process in the courts. But that opportunity will be taken if arbitrary powers are executed by the police, who are supposed to act within the law, but the law would not be given that final opportunity. Well, thank you so much. And what is your interest in this case, your background? Technically, are you a protester yourself, or are you just interested if you come along to support?
I am a member of the public, and I feel that this is significant for many, many people. In fact, it's significant for everybody, and we should be aware of what these legislations mean. Now, my interest in this case is partly personal, because I believe that we shouldn't be going to war. I believe that we should be supporting our NHS and not privatising. I believe that the financial crimes which the sovereign state of the City of London is allowed to get away with is completely unjust and unlawful, and that we need an English Assembly as well as a Scottish Parliament as well as the Welsh Assembly. We, the English here, are not represented by this British Parliament. Who is the British Parliament? They purely represent the City of London Corporation, and this is unacceptable. Daily we get lied to. The mass media lies to us daily because it's controlled by huge corporations who decide what it's important that we should know about. Now, why should these corporations who have this massive power and sway within Parliament be given the power to decide what is legitimate protest and what is not? And the fact is that this case and these legislations have huge impact on the fact that on our freedom of speech and our freedom to protest and what is protest? Protest is informing each other and reaching out to the public, and informing the public and reaching out to the powers that be. Why should we not be allowed to peacefully protest? Without peaceful protest, how could this ever be a democracy?
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much.